Welcome back to Holding Court with the Nerd Queens, and today we have a special guest. Sean, thank you for coming.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And we are honored to have you. I think the fandom is very excited for this podcast.
Based on the response on social media, they are a very passionate group, and I love seeing that.
Well, after you made your comments on Cheddar, that news video you did, everybody's been really excited to hear your thoughts and everything. So we're really excited to have you, so that way we can discuss that with you and other things.
Well, I hope you have a lot of time, because I've got a lot of thoughts about this. I've been tracking this story for a really long time, but have just now sort of dipped my toes into the pool that is this group that's fighting so hard to raise awareness, not just for the cut, but also for the Suicide Prevention Center, which I think is terrific.
Hey, we are always here to discuss Snyder Cut.
Oh, yes.
So I say let's just hop into it. Let's just start off.
Let's go.
Right.
First, I wanted to ask, you want to quickly introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know who the magical Sean O'Connell is?
Yes, exactly. That's a great idea. So I am the managing director of an entertainment website called CinemaBlend. I've been with them for roughly 7 or 8 years, but I've been doing film journalism for about 20 years now. I've been at outlets like Fandango and USA Today. I was with a website called filmcritic.com for a long time, and then I was with a group called City Search, which was run by Microsoft. Long story short, I've been, covering the film industry and been on the film beat for a really long time. And what sort of draws me into the idea of Justice League and the idea of the Snyder Cut eventually, in a long sort of way, is that I'm just a comic book nerd also. Like, I grew up reading comics, and it's been a really happy accident that some of the biggest blockbusters in the field that I chose to cover. I was a movie nut also, in addition, but then a comic book geek growing up. And so it's amazing now that the film industry is so immersed in creating superhero franchises and comic book adaptations. And I was more of a Marvel kid, but always read a bunch of DC as well too. So I've always sort of rooted for the healthy competition between the two studios at the theaters. I've always wanted to see DC and Warner Brothers basically catch up to a lot of what Marvel has been able to pull off in the MCU. And so I tracked, religiously the work that was being done on Man of Steel and then BVS to help build that world. And then, I will say, and we might get into some of this a little bit later on, I've never seen a situation covering all of this stuff professionally like what happened with Justice League. I mean, it's staggering to have a movie that by all accounts should be an instant home run for a studio. Putting those characters together on the big screen for the first time for many of them, it should have for Warner Brothers, they should have been printing money.
Yeah,
and then
to
see a studio change horses midstream, to borrow an analogy, is dumbfounding to me. No matter what the situation was, to just switch directors halfway through is ridiculous to me. And so I've always kind of been fascinated with that. And I'll start with this too, and then we can switch over to questions that you guys have. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was one of a small group of people back in 2016, if I'm doing the math right, who was invited to the set of Justice League. They invited a couple of reporters from a bunch of different sets to go watch Zach shoot the film and to take away the message that, because I think what happened was Batman Superman came out. Largely, mainstream audiences found it to be a little bit too serious and a little bit too dark, because they wanted to really change the narrative tide on Justice League as quick as they could, and basically let people know, like, no, this one's going to be fun. If you thought that Batman and Superman being mad at each other was not what you were hoping to get out of the DC films, then don't worry. There's a better one coming around the corner. And even Zach was sort of playing up that angle, on the set that day of just like BVS had to be antagonistic because I wanted them to be against each other to almost tear them apart.
Story.
Yeah, that was the structure, and that was what it was meant to be. But he definitely at that time viewed Justice League as a quote unquote we're putting the team together movie, and he was. I'm not going to say he was going for a Marvel tone, but he was definitely going for a lighter tone than what he delivered in BVS.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool though that you got to go to the set and everything and witness that in person.
It was unbelievable.
Not at all jealous.
Oh yeah, totally not jealous.
No, it was unbelievable, and it was great to be able to. So the scene that we watched them film that day, and here's how I know that this is what Warner Brothers really, really wanted us to do. That they wanted to start changing the story in the press, because normally when we go to a set visit, we have to sit on the material and not run it until a much later time. Like we'll go see them shoot something, and then several months later, if not even a year later, when it's closer to the release of whatever movie we went to go watch them film, we'll start running our stories then. And if you pay attention to a bunch of the different movie sites, they all sort of drop their stories around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But with Justice League, we were told even before we went, this one's going to be different. Whatever you guys learn on the set, you can start publishing like the next day. Like we want to start letting people know that this movie's coming. Zach has this vision. And so we did. Like we went over a weekend. It was a London set, and by Monday we were publishing stories for the entire week of documenting everything that we saw. And so I know that they really wanted to let DC fans know that if they were disappointed in Batman vs Superman, and the only reason why I use the word disappointed for Batman vs Superman, well, for two reasons. A, it's a movie that they absolutely thought should have gone over $1 billion. Right around that time. When Man of Steel came out, Iron Man 3 had crossed $1 billion. Avengers had crossed $1 billion. It was a milestone that the Marvel movies were hitting that I know the Warner Brothers DC movies wanted to do. And they assumed BVS would be the one to do it for them. And when it stalled at like 660 or somewhere in that, 660 million, I want to say.
BVS made almost 900 million.
Oh, did it get that high? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just think that they wanted to ensure that they told the fans that Justice League was back on the right track, as if the franchise had ever really gone off of a track.
Yeah, and what we've noticed, what's really troubling, and the problem started with BVS, is that WB has this really crazy way of self-sabotaging themselves, because the BVS would have been received a lot better. They would have probably broken $1 billion. Like, I'm not in the industry, I'm not a professional, but I can say that I think it would have broken $1 billion if they hadn't given the theatrical version the treatment they did. Because anyone who's seen the theatrical version and then watched the extended cut, it's like, oh, the story suddenly makes a lot more cohesive sense. Like, we're actually enjoying this more.
And that's exactly...
I remember...
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that's exactly why I believe in a Snyder Cut, because we almost have seen this happen, with BVS. You're exactly right. Like, I left Batman Superman and I was like, there's something incomplete here, Like, I kind of understand what he's going for, but something's not clicking. And then I saw the extended director's cut and I was like, oh, these are all just the little story beats that actually were necessary to hammer home what he was trying to do. So I get that when he's able to actually complete his vision, I'm not going to guarantee that the Justice League is going to be instantly saved, but I can pretty much bet that it's better than what we saw in the theatrical cut.
Oh, definitely. And it's like, you would think after they gave him the reins to do Man of Steel as he would, and that was a masterpiece, and people across the board loved it, and they didn't cut that one up. You think they would have continued that trend, but then they messed up with BVS, and nobody's learning from mistakes here.
I still remember how we were at your friend's school, and he didn't watch BVS before, or more like he didn't finish it because he was like, this wasn't exactly my kind of a film. And then we were like, okay, watch the ultimate cut with us. And at the end of the ultimate cut, he just looked at us and goes like, why wasn't this in the cinema? So yeah, that's about what sums it up. Yeah.
You know what I was thinking? It was Justice League that hit 657. You're right. BVS definitely climbed into the 800s. I knew one of them was around that time.
Yeah, BVS, and even the Ultimate Cut, the sales of the DVDs and Blu-rays with the Ultimate Cut showed that the theatrical cut just needed something a bit more. They should have just trusted Zack. But yeah, we are where we are now.
We are.
So
it's not exactly a good place, but hey, that's part of what's made the Snyder Cut movement so amazing, is that even though this terrible thing happened, we've been able to bring so much positivity out of it, and it's hard to almost regret the fact that this happened to begin with, because when we look at all the achievements, all the money we've raised, the people we've reached, it's
the friends we've made.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how the last 2 years for us personally has changed so much in the world. But at the same time, it's like Zack deserves so much better.
He does, for sure. I mean, he invested 7 years of his life into this at least, and planned to put as much time as it took to complete the arc of films that he had. So yes, to leave mid-project and then still to be left wondering what could have been has got to be really difficult. But then it has to be encouraging from your guys' perspective to see the recognition. When the billboards go up in Times Square, to know that he's seeing it and encouraging it is really empowering.
Yeah, we've said before, is if Zack ever told us to stop, we would.
Right. And it seems like he's doing the opposite.
Exactly. Which is why we keep doing what we do. And also it's just so satisfying to see, the fundraisers, see so much success come out of it.
Absolutely.
So do we want to...
If we go to questions, and they effectively stole all of our questions, almost.
So we're going to start off with one from your girl Meg. She's a friend of ours. And she said, what were your first impressions of the Snyder Cut movement, and how did you come to find it?
Well, you hear about, hashtag release the Snyder Cut, and have been hearing about it ever since the theatrical cut was released into theaters. And, initially you don't believe that it's much of anything, because some of these movements have come around over the years. I'm trying to think of some other examples of films that were disrupted during production. Nothing quite as drastic as this. But you didn't give it, or I didn't personally give it that much credence, because I always kind of just assumed that for Zack, he had moved on, this was not going to be something that he was going to return to. From an industry perspective, I was sort of stepping back and looking at where DC and Warner Brothers wanted to go. And you could tell that by the time that they released the theatrical cut of Justice League, they had already made the decision to move forward with sort of solo standalone films and not necessarily build on what was being done in Justice League, which is, it's going to be impossible to talk about the DC Warner Brothers universe without making comparisons to what was happening in the MCU. Because I really do think, and tell me if you guys disagree with this, but I really do think that some of those early decisions for Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman were made to almost mirror ways that the Marvel movies, at least connected to each other, that they might have introduced story points, but they would pick up in someone else's film and keep going.
Oh, and definitely.
Yeah, that's basically how most franchises work.
Yes, but that's really hard to do. The fact that the MCU has been able to do it is kind of impossible also. And I don't know how much longer they would be able to maintain that momentum either way. And who's to say, I think that DC, if they had stuck to it, could have gotten a few more stories. I think we'd be closer to the Flash movie, potentially Green Lantern Corps, if they were introduced properly. Movies like that, I think we'd be closer to those than I don't think we'd be doing Birds of Prey necessarily, or another Suicide Squad that has to change directors. Also, it just sort of changed the direction of the future of the DCEU when Justice League didn't connect. So, but even still, so I heard about the release of Snyder Cut movement, and I was like, well, that's, pie in the sky. Like, there's just no way that there is enough there to salvage what Zach filmed before Joss took over. Even though, and I don't know how you guys felt, and I hate to make you relive the memory, but when you watched the theatrical cut for the first time, I'm sure you could pinpoint scenes where you're just like, all right, Josh shot that. That's a fill-in. That's a punch-in for a joke. Like, just awkward scenes that just don't fit, right?
Yeah, exactly. You literally just worded how most of us...
We have reliving nightmares, especially with two scenes, one involving Wonder Woman and one involving Lois Lane.
Oh, see, I thought the one that stands out to me is Batman on the grass after the Superman fight.
Something's definitely bleeding.
That's it.
That
one.
My
God.
That looks like it was shot on a soundstage like a week before the movie was released.
It does. And also, you can tell that, like, Ben Affleck was not feeling the delivery on that. Like, it just sucks because you can almost, like... We didn't have a build-up that much to Justice League, but that's because the way Zach had designed his scheme here was that we wouldn't need it. But you got to know the characters and their mannerisms and the way the actors deliver their lines really quickly. And, like, in that moment, it was like, oh, he's not feeling that. He's not feeling that at all. And you know what? Neither are we.
Right. No, it's awkward.
But, hey, at least he knew he's in that scene.
Yeah, true. But... the other scene that Nana was starting to say stood out. That was the one where the Flash falls on top of Diana and ends up with his face in her boobs, which we've heard through the gossip grapevine was body doubles. That the actors,
no kidding.
That the actors didn't know that was going to happen. So they saw that on the screen the first time, too.
Oh, God. Can you imagine?
And it's just, I mean, it's probably, we might even like be more focused on it as women, but it just felt so degrading in a way.
Right.
And it was like, this is not Zack Snyder. This is not what he would have done, Right.
No, it's true. But so to keep going down the path, you hear about the release of Snyder Cut movement. You know the hashtag. For a little while, it's not a punchline, but it's like a joke made amongst movie writers when something doesn't go your way and you want to see a better version of something. Yeah. And you'd be like, oh, yeah, well, let's release the Snyder Cut version of such and such movie that bombed, right? But what I found most fascinating about this, and this is why I remain really fascinated in this story, is that, and you alluded to this, ladies, you said, Zach has the power to stop this, to tomorrow if he wanted to. He could literally come out and say, I listen, guys, it's not even, it's like 10%, of what you're hoping to see. It's not here. And I'm really sorry to string you guys along. I know you really passionately want to see it, but there's never going to be. But instead, what he would do, and we would cover it every single time on CinemaBlend, which is why I would know he would do it. He would release something else on Vero. Mm-hmm. And it would be a tantalizing, shot or a suggestion of a character, a dark side hint, something. And you'd be like, oh, man, he really shot a lot more than we thought. So then, the amateur sleuths start putting together pieces from already released footage, And some of it is stuff that's been poured over religiously over the years, whether it be the football scene, which was clearly shot, or different references to the mother box, or alternate cuts to fight scenes that you've seen. Forget about the color palette shift,
or even the trailers themselves.
Yeah, things that are just over the years that have come out, and you're like, God, this was really messed with a lot further than you thought, and so every time that it kind of died down a little bit, Zach would figure out a way to fan the flame again. And the more he did it, the more it just sort of hooked me that like, oh, there's a lot more here. And he doesn't want people to forget that his version exists. And it does. I firmly believe that his version exists. And it's just a matter of the fact that his hands are tied for right now.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, over the years, getting comments that either slipped up or some of the actors found their way around NDAs and actually said, yeah, it exists, or I support it. Like, I mean, we just had Jason Momoa on Instagram saying that he saw the cut and it was sick and he's obsessed with it. And
that was huge. That was a huge confirmation. And he's been stirring the pot, like even on the Aquaman press junket. He talked a bit about it, or he would at least throw his support behind it to say, well, I want to see it. And of course I support Zach, and Zach gave me my start and all this stuff. He said all the right things.
I noticed that he had to a lot of times mention it, mostly because they cut off the end where where Arthur makes the decision in Justice League. He's going to go home and talk to his dad. And so people were like, how did he get from point A to point B? And I saw him doing that a lot in the press junket, which just showed a lot more, like, what was cut out.
Right. Very true.
Okay, so we covered that. And
so Max had one follow-up question to that, and we can actually kind of follow up with it. From what we know about the scenes cut from the original Justice League, which what we've just talked about, well, which would you be most excited to see?
Well, and I said this on Twitter. I want to see Zach's plans for Superman. So let's go back to BVS, which even in his director's cut, they kill off Superman, but he's still at the very end moves the dirt to imply, don't worry, he's coming back. And I'll say that's a disappointing scene for me. Because if you're going to kill him, commit to having him dead, right? Like, it's too early of a hint to the fan base to just be like, but don't worry, he's coming back. Like, we all know he's coming back. Obviously, we've read Death of Superman, and we know you're not getting rid of Henry Cavill in your franchise, obviously. But, I think everything with the return of Superman in the theatrical cut of Justice League is so ham-fisted and poorly executed. Mm-hmm. And, one of the scenes that people pull from early trailers is the Arthur scene in what looks to be is it a garage? He's working on a car. Is that what's happening in that scene?
I think that was when he was in the garage where the Batmobile is.
Okay.
Or whatever.
And we assume he's seeing Superman return. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, none of that happens. We get nothing at all from what we see in the Justice League cut. And, because of the mustache reshoots, all of that looks horrendous. And, from what I understand, too, from doing research on it, that fight in the park, or at least a fight in the park, is supposed to happen much earlier in the story, is it not?
According to storyboards that we've seen every now and again, now, mind you, Zach shows it on Vero out of order.
Sure.
Because, of course, that's, he doesn't want to give everything away, just in case. But from what we've seen, that it looks like that's, the first thing they encounter as a group. They bring the group together, then it's like, oh, crap, we got to go beat this guy. Or go stop him.
Yeah, I mean, I love Cavill as Superman, right? I think he's been a tremendous choice who hasn't yet been given the opportunity to truly shine in the role. I think that Man of Steel had to juggle a lot of origin story stuff and really kicked into its full gear in the back half of that film. Batman Superman ends up becoming a Man of Steel sequel that he has to share largely with Batman and some with Wonder Woman. So it's not a true Superman sequel. And Justice League, he's supposed to become the centerpiece of that film. It's supposed to be about Batman recruiting the team, but eventually Superman's going to become the centerpiece of that team. And instead, the eventual fight against Steppenwolf is just so bad. It's bad. It's so bad. But specifically from Superman's point of view, all the cool stuff that Superman should be able to do, it gets shortchanged in Justice League. And so I would be chomping at the bit. I feel like most of the character introductions and their arcs, at the very least, transitioned enough from what Zach started and what Whedon completed. Now, there's, differences, of course, along the way, but you largely got, Batman on his mission to put the team together, collaborating with Diana. We watched them, like one of the scenes we watched Zach film on the set in London, and he showed us the finished cut of it while we were there. He'd sort of spliced it together to give us an idea how the team was playing off of each other. Was the scene in Barry Allen's apartment when Bruce is sitting in the chair waiting for him to show up and throws the batarang and Barry catches it. Like, we watched all that. So I know that was originally already part of Zach's vision.
That scene is amazing.
Well, I know that Cyborg gets, butchered a bit too, that there's a lot of material that got left on the cutting room floor in terms of his story. But, I mean, when we asked Zach about Superman on the set that day, he wouldn't tell us anything. That was the one character that he was just going to protect. And again, I told you guys, like I said, with this set, they were trying to be as open and as transparent as physically possible. And they showed us everything, costumes, storyboards. They revealed everything that was going to happen, except how they're going to bring Superman back and how important it would be to that story when it happened. And so I would love to see ultimately what Zach had in store for Superman and how he planned to bring him back and put him at the center of the reformed team.
I think that still remains quite a mystery. Like, that was something that Zach didn't hint at very much. Like, he still keeps that to his chest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, want to know.
With good reason. Yeah, it's a huge reveal. And you're right. I'm with you guys. I sort of just need to know what do you plan to do.
Okay. So thank you so much for your answer. We totally agree with you, by the way. So Danny is asking, considering the tremendous success of Joker being a deep and dark film, could this be considered a sign for Warner Brothers that the Snyder Cut of Justice League would be successful as well? Are the audiences ready for movies of such tone?
I think that's a great question. And I really do think that these are conversations that are happening at Warner Brothers right now because, they're trying to chart their way forward. They might be surprised at the success of an R-rated film, at the success of an R-rated film that's based on a villain also. As recognizable and as iconic as the Joker is, it's still a movie that doesn't have traditionally Batman in it, and Warner Brothers has, leaned on the presence of Superman and Batman in most of their DC films. They're starting to get experimental. Obviously, doing a Suicide Squad film feels experimental from that perspective. Banking on Wonder Woman now to start sort of carry your franchise moving forward is the right call. Now, that hey, look, what we're doing now is working. Aquaman is successful and Wonder Woman was successful. And we're starting to attract filmmakers like James Gunn, who wants to come over here and do a Suicide Squad movie. And maybe they just want to keep looking ahead. But the part that I don't understand is that they're sitting on a potential moneymaker here in the form of the Snyder Cut of Justice League. And even just as a show of fan good faith, to say to the people who are so passionate about fighting for Zach's version to come out, to just say, we hear you guys, we understand how you feel about it. And I know that, like, in order to get to that point, to clear the hurdle and to get the Snyder Cut released, some really powerful people in a industry that is driven by ego have to swallow their egos and say, we made a mistake, early on. We messed this up, and nothing that we do is going to really fix that. But here's a pretty big Band-Aid that we can put on the situation in the form of us restoring the vision for this filmmaker for at least one film, because it's never going to lead to all the movies that he wanted to make. But at the very least, we could get the complete version of what he was looking for here. And I'll add this too. We have a podcast over on CinemaBlend called Real Blend that I host, and we were lucky enough to have Kevin Smith come on, and he is obviously a big proponent for most comic book movies and is a big fan of the Snyder Cut too. And he went at length about just how nowadays in our culture of audiences picking up DVDs and Blu-rays because they want to see extended cuts and they want to see deleted scenes, and they're used to seeing storyboards and blooper reels and unfinished versions of movies that they love. They just crave more and more for the movies that they are passionate about, that we're savvy enough to watch a theoretically unfinished version of Justice League, because I don't think WB would sink any more money into it. Although I do kind of think that Zach might put up his own money to finish the effects to give this fan base the right version of Justice League. But yeah, was Joker's success going to convince WB that they need to release it? Not necessarily. I think it might empower them to keep making bold decisions and strike off in different directions. But I also just think that somewhere along the line, they're going to come to the realization that the right thing to do by this fan base is to let Zach, show off the version of Justice League that he had, because it's such an important piece of the DC universe to have an ensemble Justice League film done, and part of our collections. It's just so vital. It's just so important.
And to have it done correctly.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I have the Justice League one. Believe me. It doesn't feel right, but it's there. It's on the shelf.
Sorry, but we love that you say that. That you call it Justice League. Everybody was saying how after your segment on Cheddar that they were like, "Oh my God, he was gonna say Justice League."
I was. I know. It was right there in my. I just didn't know if they'd know what I meant by it, and
No, it's great. It shouldn't have any other name because it's definitely not Justice League.
Oh, so tell me this, because I've never seen this. Has he ever spoken publicly about his work on the film?
Whedon?
Yeah.
Now that you mention it. Well, geez, I don't know.
I don't know if I've ever seen a single interview with him where he's discussed the work that he did for it. It's almost like he signed an NDA and completed the work on it, which is staggering to me, because clearly he was hired because he was the man who delivered 2 Avengers films for Marvel. And they essentially, backed up the Brinks truck and said, do what you did over there, but do it here. And he was faced with an impossible situation, I just don't know how he could. If you put 2 filmmakers together, 2 voices together, Zach and Joss they're not compatible.
No, they're not.
No, they each do their own thing, and they both do it very well. I'm not going to crap on Joss Whedon. I like a lot of stuff that he's done. But you either hire him to do Justice League from the get-go, and you admit that you're going in a completely different direction, or you just let Zach finish, but you don't ask one to finish the other's work. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And no, now that you mention it, I can't think of a single interview or even a tweet.
That's true. But I just always assumed that it's just me not being interested, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated to hear what he has to say about it. I would love to hear his side of it.
I don't know. Well, if anyone who's listening to this, if you know something, comment down below, please. We need to...
Yes, we're curious now.
Okay, the next question is from Lord Koj. He says, what moved or inspired you about the Snyder Cut movement and led to you wanting to basically be openly a part of it?
2 things. A, any fan base that shows this level of passion for both a filmmaker, and their vision for a story. I'm a story junkie, and so people who buy into a story being told the right way are always going to get my attention. Especially in this, people talk about superhero blockbusters being soulless franchises that are just cash grabs. And I think that that's the complete opposite, both on the Marvel side and the DC side. Fans invest in these worlds and they want them to transport them to other places, to places that are, intimately familiar to us because we read the stories and we absorb the comic books, and these characters mean everything to us. And so we want to see them treated properly. And so I understand, the DC fans who want to see a proper version of Justice League. For many of us, we've been waiting for that our whole lives. We're in the golden age of superhero films, and people who are fans of various characters are seeing outstanding interpretations of characters that they have adored for most of their lives. And so if you tell me that we're getting a Justice League movie, I'm bouncing off the walls, like I can't wait to see it. And I want to be able to watch it again and again and again. So when you tell me that there's a terrible version of it, it's heartbreaking to me, So I would instantly get behind a movement that champions bringing an auteur's vision of a superhero film to light. But when you couple it with the second factor, which is the funds raised for suicide awareness and suicide prevention, when you factor in what Debbie and Zach went through, that's proves to me that there's a beating heart in the middle of this Snyder Cut movement that I think a lot of people glossed over. They see on social media that there are billboards and they're like, oh, who are these fanatics who want another version of Justice League? Let it go. But no, you don't let it go for a bigger reason, that there's a sympathetic cause that you're raising money and awareness for. And if it helps, listen, it sounds so cliche. I don't even want to say it. But if it helps one person, then all of this is worth it times 10.
Definitely. I mean, cliche or not, that's essentially what we're going with. And if what we're doing is helps one person, one single person, then we've done it right,
And I wasn't aware that was a factor in this movement until just recently. And once I heard that, I was like, oh, this is something special that I would like to help raise support for.
And
I think that if we, sorry to jump into it, but I think that even if we ask, the listeners right now, say comment or tell us, a lot of them would tell you that this is the part why they started to be interested as well and why they joined, because for many of them, this whole movement and everything we do and why we do it, it wasn't just an inspiration. It helped them save their own life in a way as well. And I think that's what's really powerful and cool about this movement, this group of people, and why even Cole and I joined over a year ago now. So definitely agree with you on that one.
Well, I'd like to ask you guys a follow-up question.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Say we ultimately get the cut.
Mm-hmm.
And it teases other things that he was going to do in subsequent films.
Okay.
Isn't that equally painful? Because even if they're able to get his version restored, it's because a chunk of it has been shot, They're not going to reverse course so fully that he's reinstated again. Well, so would you be disappointed in the fact that it happened, but is not going to keep going as far as you all would love to see it go?
Well,
I think
stranger things have happened. You never know, honestly. While, yes, we have seen the DCEU take a different course at this point, Zach is also an incredibly talented storyteller, and I feel like if they did see the wild success that I can guarantee from a fandom point of view would come with releasing the Snyder Cut, if they saw that and they decided to bring him back, I have confidence in his ability to be able to work with the other directors in this universe to make his story, if not completely, or just enough to get out some of the stuff he wanted to talk about. Because he is one of those writers who who adapts. He's done so many different genres, whether it be from commercials he's done to films he's done. And he's also very good, very outspoken about his support for every single one of the directors and saying he's spoken to them, if not multiple times, but like in person. He works with Patty Jenkins on Wonder Woman occasionally. Yep. So honestly, like, no, we're not going to get his total vision. But if they decided, okay, we really did mess up, this is what they want, and they did bring him back, then I think that he would be more than capable of working with his colleagues to make sure that this is cohesive, that it comes together the way it should. and that we would get things that he had hinted at. I don't think he would leave it hanging. I have confidence that he could tell his story even now.
Cool.
I think if I offer the opposite point of view, or not opposite point of view, but say we go completely different direction and say, okay, there will be no follow-up, I think it would, in a way, be still a bittersweet closure for us, in a way, because we would still at least get that Snyder Cut. We would at least still see Superman's story. We would, at least that piece that you've mentioned yourself, the part that we were really interested to see. We would still see some incredible things in there that we already know that we would, because we know that there would be much more to Cyborg's story. We've recently learned that there was Martian Manhunter involved.
Oh, what a reveal that was, right?
That was fantastic, but it also made me so angry.
I know.
I even told this to Cole, I told this to my friends, is that, but like in the light of that reveal, it's, if one day we get Snyder Cut, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be amazing, because it's all these things that we've really wanted to see on the screen. And we know those things are there. But in the same time, I will still feel robbed by Warner Brothers, because those were things that we didn't know about before Justice League came out. Those were things that were supposed to be a surprise. We were supposed to sit in that cinema and at the edge of our seats be completely shocked at everything that comes out. And we're never going to have that again.
My dream would
not
be...
Not fully and entirely. We're not going to have this full and entire experience with every single surprise that was supposed to be in that film. It's still going to be amazing. I am still going to be super happy about it. But that initial first thing, that initial first moment, that was taken away from us.
My dream would be that it triggered at least one more Cavill Superman film. Just the next step for that character.
Yeah, that probably would have.
And
but I think that it's just for, what movement's trying to do, obviously, aside from our charity work to get the Snyder Cut out. In a way, it would be our closure as well.
Oh, sure.
At least to see Ben Affleck one more time as Batman. Because he was, just like Henry Cavill was great Superman, Ben Affleck was perfect Batman.
Yep.
And just at least one more time.
And, at the end of the day, whether we get it or not, Zach has gifted us the DCEU as we know it. And Zach also has gifted us an incredible cast. Everyone he chose to play the members of the League were all spot on. I remember when hearing about certain people being cast, I was unsure about it, but the second I saw the trailer at San Diego Comic-Con, I knew he was going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if that's all we get, an amazing cast is like his legacy and the Snyder Cut at the end of the day, then yeah, it'll suck, but it'll at the same time be a victory, and it will be closure.
All right, sorry. I usually interview people. I didn't mean to turn.
Oh my God,
no!
It's a discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is from Tim, and he wants to know, why is the press so apprehensive about stating that the Snyder Cut exists, regardless of the fact that the crew, cast, and even Zach has said it exists?
That is a great question, and I saw that question, and I'm glad that we're able to address it. And I think it's really just because journalists have to be cynical until tangible evidence is in front of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people have told certain stories in the press that end up becoming not true, especially covering the film industry. Certain movies are never, ever going to happen, and then they get announced, or this actor or that director are absolutely 100% not attached to a movie, and then they get confirmed. So I think ultimately we all believe Zach, that he has his cut, and of course I trust, when someone like Momoa or Ray Fisher for a long time talked about the things that go into the cut, but we're all trained to just reflexively use words that protect us slightly to say things like alleged Snyder Cut, reported Snyder Cut, until it exists. We can't treat something like cold, concrete fact, even though it comes from the filmmaker's word, from their mouth, until it's an actual DVD that I can pop into a player and watch in its entirety, because we've been burned multiple times by filmmakers who have told us up and down, left and right, this is 100% a factual thing, or is absolutely not going to happen, and then the complete opposite thing of what we were told happens.
That actually helps a lot. And personally, that shines a lot of light on that whole situation.
Well, I think a lot of times when those words are used, it gets turned back on the journalists that they're trying to undermine the movement, or that they're trying to demean the movement, and it's not that at all. It's just that we're trying as much as we can in this industry to trade in facts, cold, hard, concrete facts. And I can even say to you that, Zach saying it, now this is a different case, because I firmly believe Zach when he says he has a cut. But, I'm saying that there have been several filmmakers who have said something and they mean the complete opposite.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what I actually, if I can piggyback off of that, because some people asked, questions regarding media in general. There were multiple of them. And so I was thinking we could kind of sum it up all together. As you said, it's not necessarily media undermining the movement or our efforts. It's just the, trying to get the facts out. But in the same time, do you feel like there is no negativity towards us at all? Because in the past, obviously, we've had some really bad experiences with the press and media and coverage of our efforts. So a lot of people are now apprehensive towards media and kind of, expecting things to be our. So what would you say to that? What do you think about that? Do you think that there are still, media in majority opposed to what we do? Is there anything, does stuff like that even exist, or is it genuinely just trying to do facts?
I think that you are 100% right in that some journalists write with an agenda. They shouldn't, not all the time, unless they're columnists. There's a difference between reporters and columnists. Columnists are supposed to have opinions, strong opinions that stir the pot, right? They're trying to get clicks. They're trying to get people angry. That's their job. Do I think wholeheartedly that they oppose you guys? No, not at all. I don't think they oppose you guys. I don't think they have a vested interest in it, personally. I don't think they really care. They don't necessarily care. They wouldn't care if they saw the first Justice League movie. They don't necessarily care to see another Justice League movie. These superhero films might not be their cup of tea, but it's more beneficial to them to write something antagonistic against a movement, to say, on the surface, oh, look at these people, they're ridiculous. They won't let it go that they didn't get their superhero movie, without even bothering to see that it's about so much more than that. And you're never going to convince those people. You're not going to necessarily win them over to your side one day. But you have to sort of just step back and realize they're writing from a point of an agenda. And listen, some people are going to support you. Some people are going to think that you're wasting your time. And you have to just, I think, keep
your head up.
Keep the flame burning with the people that it matters with. You have to accept the fact that not everybody's going to understand what you're trying to do, and you can't let the fact that some people disagree with it get you down. That's counterproductive.
That you just managed to answer 6 questions all at once, so that was impressive. Questions we didn't even ask yet. So
well, I think that from observing the movement for the past year, I'd say a year. Sometimes members of the group get too caught up in how the movement is perceived. And I don't think you guys need to worry about that. You're not trying to convince the people who are against the idea. And especially on social media, people are against ideas just to be against them. It's so much more productive for you guys to focus on the positives then anytime it sort of distracts over into fighting a fight with somebody who's not going to be on your side no matter what happens, that's wasted energy. It's wasted energy. You know, you guys have the support of an army of passionate people, but you have the support of Zack Snyder. Like, that photo that he put on Vero about how moved he was by the billboards tells you guys everything that you need to know. He hears you guys, and he believes in what you're doing. And that negates any internet troll who thinks that what you're doing is ridiculous, because it clearly isn't. It clearly is not.
I think you just managed to motivate the entire movement.
Let's go. Come on.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is going to I think you just got everyone riled.
Well, good. My work here is done. No, really, I love it. I mean, I really do love it. I think it's tremendous that, listen, film moves me. Storytelling moves me. Superhero movies in particular are my bag. And so this is, you know, a confluence of all of these amazing things coming together. And then you throw in the fact that it's ultimately raising awareness for a great cause too. That, like, what's not to love about this? What's not to love?
Well, thank you. Those were very kind words.
Of course.
I'm
of course,
smiling
ladies.
so hard right now. And so to kind of, we're going to take a step away from discussing the journalism aspect and ask about your opinion as a viewer, but also from what you know in the industry. Our Twitter buddy Paul asks, what do you think the odds are of WB releasing the cut onto HBO Max? Or do you see it as possible that Netflix could decide to just buy it from them, giving their budding relationship with Snyder? And he mentions that there is precedent to this because that is what happened with Mowgli.
Yeah, I mean, I have learned over the years that anything is possible in this industry. And I'll give you another example of something that I would have told you years ago, that you're smoking crack if you ever dreamed of it happening, and it's Spider-Man being shared between Sony and Disney.
Yeah.
Like, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. But rules are meant to be broken, and the landscape changes on a yearly basis. And streaming is a major player that is making studios rethink almost everything. So the idea of HBO Max, of course, like, why wouldn't you put it on there? Especially with streaming services needing to have valuable pieces of content to lure over new subscribers. You know, like, as Disney Plus launches, Netflix is going to need something really cool and shiny to keep you as a subscriber. And if Warner Brothers, which I believe is going to start their own streaming service, or if they do use HBO Go, that's a great incentive for a lot of other people to come over and invest their monthly subscription. So, listen, I don't want to put a percentage on anything, but it's a lot higher than I ever thought it was, to be honest with you, because I've seen much, much crazier things happen in this industry than just a studio decides to release the unfinished or slightly unpolished version of a story that a large number of people are clamoring for.
I keep finding myself unable to talk at the end of your answers because they're coming out so much more well thought out than what I could say. So.
Well, thank you. I'm telling you, I'm very passionate about this subject, and I really do. I believe, all the stuff that you guys are.
We really love that you're as much of a fanboy of this stuff as we are.
I really am, and have been for a long time. I hate to cut you guys off, but I kind of have to get running.
That's no problem at all. We're so grateful that you came to chat with us for a little while. Is there one?
Yeah,
is
definitely.
There room for
it was amazing. Thank you so much.
There's just one last question I wanted to try to slip in. You think you have a minute?
Of course, yeah. I can do one more.
Okay, so Mick D was asking, do you have any inside sources at WB Corporate that could possibly confirm or deny if Miss Sarnoff has been receiving the letters and whatnot that we've been sending her?
That is yeah, I wish I did. And I'm glad you asked that. That's a relatively new thing, the letter writing campaign that I saw you guys do. And
that's like the third or fourth I think we've done.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, we've done multiple before.
This is the first one
but
for
this was
Anne.
the first one to Anne.
Here's what I'll say, knowing absolutely nothing about where those letters go. These studios seem like giant conglomerates with people that you can't reach, right? That are protected in ivory towers and all this jazz. But what I've witnessed over the years is that's not the case. That mail gets to them and messages get to them and social media movements land on their radar. And so while I have no confirmation whatsoever that the letters sent reached her, based on everything I know, I would guess that they found their way at least in her inner circle. You know, I'm not going to say she opens every piece of mail that she gets, but people who get her mail got them. If all those things were sent, and I saw pictures of people dropping them into mailboxes, so I know that they were sent. They got there. It's just a matter of how was that message absorbed.
Thank you. That's something that's been a big question throughout everyone lately, and everyone saw that the opportunity to ask someone who might have a little bit more insight.
Well, and I know this too. I'll talk from her perspective again, knowing nothing about her. She probably understands, and see now I throw a word probably in there like this because I'm couching it because I can't speak in any definites.
Of course.
She probably understands that any little hint she gives in public of an awareness of, or a recognition of, or God forbid support for, will get translated in ways that she might not want it to get translated, right? So silence from her doesn't mean I don't recognize you guys. Silence could really just mean I don't know what the message we're going to put forward is yet. And so, we're not going to say anything until we know exactly what we can and should say. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
So I would say don't be discouraged by silence. The only thing you should be discouraged by is if someone from Warner Brother were to come out and say, this is stupid, stop. Like it's never going to happen. Let it go. I think silence is actually, it's not what you want to hear, but it's a lot better than stop what you're doing. You guys are chasing a lost cause. I think silence can still mean, oh boy, we got a lot of letters here and this is legit. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do about this? Let's take a meeting in a week or two and figure out how we push forward. That's what that could mean. And again, that's just me sort of speculating what might be happening behind the scenes.
No, your insight on this is incredibly valuable because the rest of us, we're just not kids. We're a group on Twitter. We're a group on social media. We're trying our best to understand. And some people were discouraged from the silence, but putting that spin on it, I feel like writing more letters now.
Well, be a pest, but be pleasant.
Be a polite pest.
That's essentially our motto, yeah.
Pleasant pests. I like that.
Right. Like those letters, there was a lot of them, but they were very polite. And we even sent a gift basket, so...
Oh, I cannot wait to be there when this comes out, guys. I can't. It's going to be such a glorious day.
Well, thank you again for coming to hang out with us, and thank you for making time out of your day.
No problem, ladies. Thanks for having me anytime. If you ever have me back, just let me know.
Will do.
Oh,
Thank you.
Love to. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye.
Well, that was a great conversation.
It was definitely a great insight, and I think that, a lot of the questions and a lot of Sean's answers gave us a little different point of view on things. So, I have a lot of thoughts. I think that you guys listening to us right now have a lot of thoughts as well. So if you would share them with us in the comments, we can definitely discuss them. Let us know overall. What do you think? We apologize that we didn't get to all of your questions. Time was a bit of a pressing matter, but we're hoping that at least majority of them got answered and that you like the answers. And we want to thank Sean again for coming on and talking to us, because it's been amazing.
It really has, and I feel like he's helped just from his own knowledge of the industry and his experience as a journalist himself. I think he's helped smooth out a few anxieties I personally had, and I'm hoping that those of you listening will feel equally as motivated as we do, because that was great. I feel rejuvenated. I feel like I just got shocked by lightning. Let's go yell Shazam and start getting stuff done.
Yep, pretty much. But also it gave me a bit of a perspective on, how to approach and even look at all these articles in the media and how to perceive these things. I think that the advice about not focusing as much about how others see us, the haters anyway, when we have Zach's support on our backs, was really important. We should remember that. I mean, I try to remember it. I think we should all remember that. We've got the biggest fan on our side.
And that's the man himself, Zack Snyder. So, all right. So I think that's all we have to say for this episode. So
special episode of Holding Court with the Nerd Queens, signing off.